It's always in the news. Cybercriminals attacking great organizations, wreaking havoc on the trust of their brand.
We socialize cybersecurity for you to raise awareness.
Interviewing leaders who built and protect great brands.
We help talented people enter into this incredible field, and we share our research of blockbuster true cybercrime stories.
This is Cybercrime Junkies. And now the show. All right. Well, welcome everybody to Cybercrime Junkies. Good morning. I am your host, David Morrow. In the studio today, we have two illustrious gentlemen. But first and foremost, I have my always positive sidekick and business partner, Mark Mosher. Mark, how are you this morning?
Good morning. Thank you, David. No, I'm excited. We've got some great guests today. This is going to be a fantastic episode, ready to jump right in.
Yeah, we have some significant leaders today, which is great. So Carlo Brayda joins us. He's the founder and executive chairman of the Silicon Valley-based global think tank Carlo Brayda Partnership Excellence, which we are fortunate to be partners of and have attended several of them. Clearly, we're not the smartest people in those rooms. It's always a learning experience whenever we attend those think tank sessions. The think tank has a mission to improve the effectiveness of partnerships in the private and public sectors. Carlo is a member of the Forbes Technology Council and has served as CEO of Gorilla Corporation, which was founded back in the early 90s, 1992, as I recall, which is a leading global partner marketing and strategy agency for the technology sector. Carlo has been a special constituent to the World Economic Forum and an expert contributor to the G20. Also joined is Gilles Esposito. Mr. Esposito is an expert in adversary emulation and breach and attack simulation, enabling red, blue, and purple teams to build and emulate real-world adversarial campaigns. He's had a long career in cybersecurity, having served in leadership, currently with Scythe, and also previously at Edge and Hitachi. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining. We look forward to speaking.
Thank you very much. We're absolutely thrilled to be here with you, David and Mark.
Excellent. Yeah, and I'm happy to join all of your future meetings and introduce you guys like that. Like you could just have me. Yeah, every meeting we'll play a little video intro and just like introduce you.
Yeah, what an intro, exactly. No, I was looking forward to this episode together. I'm a subscriber of Cybercrime Junkies, and I think you put out some excellent productions. And I learn every time I listen to one of your podcasts. So I'm really very, very proud to be on one, frankly.
Well, thank you. Wow, we didn't even know you were going to say that or pay you for that, but thank you very much for that endorsement. That's an honorable endorsement. So let's talk about the value of partnership. You both have had pretty storied careers. Let's start with you, Carlo, because I've known you the longest, if that's okay. Just real briefly, kind of walk us through your trajectory and where you are today, and then Mr. Esposito, let's review the same.
Well, yeah. So I was originally an engineer, an information systems engineer, focusing on artificial intelligence in the early days of AI. This is going back 3 decades, and early on.
What? So can I stop you right there? I'm so sorry. I don't mean this to be rude, but what drew you to artificial intelligence like 30 years ago? Like, was there artificial intelligence? Like, apparently there was. Like, what was it then? Like, what did it look like then compared to now?
It was really primitive, frankly.
Yeah.
It was really primitive, but it was there. It was already a science that was studied in engineering faculties where I was in London, and and I actually had the opportunity to sort of dive into that when I first got employed at Philips Electronics.
Okay.
So Philips Electronics had a software division that actually eventually span off and became known as Origin, which then merged with Atos, and then it's eventually now Atos Origin. In fact, it's now Atos, right? This is integrated. So we were the
Right.
first spin-off of, the first, let's say, incarnation of ATOS. But in the earliest days of AI, what I was doing is that I was actually working as a programmer, maintaining an expert system on fault diagnosis for Philips engineers to be able to more easily query, let's say, a knowledge base essentially, and get to the solution interactively with the software. So it was early days. It was fun. I was used to program in C, and I left that. I left that because I'm not really.
You
Uh,
went out and started. You founded your own like software, didn't you? And then you did something back for the country where you were born. I thought.
yeah. So super quickly, I mean, I basically moved within Philips. They gave me the opportunity to see what marketing and sales was like, and I really found myself having a lot of fun in marketing and sales. And so eventually, I decided to let's say pivot a little bit more towards marketing and sales, and I set up my first company back in November 1992, and in a sense, the rest is history. That was the sort of first incarnation of my current business, Gorilla. And at the time, we were a pan-European research company. And guess what? The biggest questions that all hardware and software manufacturers had for us: can you please research the channel? Can you please
Right.
research what kind of partners we ought to have?
Yep.
Uh, for this type of technology, what was the right type of partner? And what kind of partners should we have in Algeria or Russia or Latin America? And so our company, my fledgling company at the time, was really engaged in all of these activities. And so I decided to really focus on partnerships in those early days. And so for the next, I don't know, 13 years, until 2003, roughly, we really focused on channel development. And we became, in a sense, the first channel development company ever in the world. Now there's quite a lot of channel consultants, channel development agencies,
Hmm.
different sorts and flavors, channel marketing agencies, but we were actually the first ones ever. So and we're still around today, miraculously. We've been going through highs and lows. We've been seeing it through recessions, weathering storms. Sometimes it's hard, and sometimes it's wonderful. But yeah, we're still there to tell the tale. And then, in a nutshell, back in 2003, roughly, I sold the business. It was a management buyout, and I
Hmm.
decided to take some money and go and uh, give back, as they say. I'm half Ethiopian, so I decided to go back to my. It wasn't my native country, but it was a country that I had an affinity towards, of course. And given that the country had just come out of 20 years of draconian hardline communism
Yep.
and no private sector, I thought, well, let me go there and see what I can do to fix it. Because as I was growing up, my family was saying, "Hey, Carlo, when you grow up, you're gonna go back and fix it, aren't you?" so,
That's
and so
wonderful.
I never knew how to fix it, right? Because
Right.
I'm not a doctor, I'm not a politician. But what I figured was that I had a knack for entrepreneurship, right? And so, and also I had a sense of wanting to give back in a way that is different. You see, there's a lot of nonprofits and organizations, but they often, if they do grassroots outreach programs, they're somewhat patronizing in the sense of, oh, we're going to Ethiopia, so why don't we? What can they do? They can basket weave. Let's create a basket weaving program and let's help
Right.
sell their baskets on the internet. And I thought, no, no basket weaving. Why? Why get them to do basket weaving? These are folks that are
Right.
just as smart as you and me in this room. They just haven't had.
Exactly. They just haven't been placed in the scenario and the environment to flourish. Right.
So I thought, let's bring the environment to them
Yeah.
and see what happens.
That's great. Yeah, your work there was absolutely remarkable. We've spoken many times about that in the past. That's thank you for all that you've done there. Like it's phenomenal. And for the listeners and watchers, you're joining us today from France, so we
Yeah,
appreciate it. It is definite massive time difference, and we appreciate your dedication here.
it's my pleasure.
Um, yeah. So, Mr. Esposito, tell us about how you got here today, and you also have been a strong leader in the channel community.
So it's mostly the channel. So in preamble, I'm going to help you because you keep calling me Mr. Esposito, and that adds like about 20 to 30 years to my already advanced age.
Yeah, because it's like when people call me Mr. Morrow, I'm always looking for my dad, right? And to be honest, in complete transparency, I've been saying because I don't know how to pronounce your first name.
I know, that's what I'm going to help you with.
So-
But it's just like the first name Jill, right? And it's been a story for the past 23 years that I've been in the
Oh my
US.
God.
That I've had probably like 2,000 different pronunciation of my first name. So it's just like Jill, just
Oh,
like
Jill.
this, right?
Okay.
It's fine.
I
Us
can
French
say
people
that.
like to add letters at the end of words to confuse everybody else,
Yeah.
and we don't pronounce them, so don't worry about it. So as I'm saying this, I am French originally. Nothing to do with Carlo being in France right now, but I moved to the US about 23 years ago now. And after that, the story is, so I was in sales before moving to the US. And when I came to the US, I first of all joined the technology sector. Before that, I was in different sectors, but not in direct sales anymore, in channel sales. And from then on, it's always going to be channels. So of course, with roles as channel manager at the beginning, and then moving, towards more managerial roles or strategic roles, and so on and so forth. And it's been mostly in technology for the past 20 years. And started with storage mostly. So Insta, Hitachi companies and others. I work with distribution, I was with partners, and I work with vendors mostly. And then about 7, 8 years ago, I made a switch to a little bit more than that now. No, 7, 8 years ago, I switched from the storage industry, which was very static, let's put it this way, and until today, it's still very static, to something that was coming up, which was cybersecurity, that was becoming more and more popular.
Yep.
And so started to work for vendors that were in identity and access management, and then in a very specific sector for a few years for a company based out of the Netherlands, where that was very involved in cybersecurity, but for a very specific vertical, which was media and entertainment.
Okay, interesting.
So protecting the feeds of Disney and Comcast and NBC, CBS, and NBA, NFL, all those type of things, right? And
we actually started this podcast. Our very first episode was about the Sony breaches.
Oh, okay.
So like,
right. Well,
we took a deep dive.
Yeah.
We talked to people. We talked to federal law enforcement. We did a bunch of research for that.
Extremely interesting. Extremely
it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Like it's really the way cybersecurity plays in the media space is very because there's so many different global elements of free speech and ownership and intellectual property, and it's so fascinating.
And the dark side, the parallel economy of media and entertainment, so all the pirate and all that kind of stuff is so well organized. You have no idea. I mean, it's like it's mind blowing to see criminal organizations that are so detailed, so well prepared, managing things like we do in the right side of things, right? The exact same way with partnerships and finance departments and this and that. It's crazy, but very interesting.
Yeah.
And so moving forward with this, I met Carlo, what was it, like 3-4 years now, and Carlo became one of my supplier in helping one of the company for which I was building a partner ecosystem. And we didn't have all the resources at the time to do everything I wanted. So it makes complete sense to go to his organization and leverage his services. And after that, we've been doing this a few times with Carlo. And as you were mentioning, yes, the last company I was with, I'm no longer with them, but the last company I was with was SAIS. SAIS was funded by a gentleman and who surrounded himself with incredible experts in the domain of adversarial cybersecurity, right?
Yeah,
so
adversarial emulation, like that is so important.
Exactly.
Yeah, red team,
And
blue team, purple
this
team.
is a fascinating world. It's really interesting. Where we actually do see a lot of AI infusions right now, but it's still, as Carlo was mentioning 30 years ago, it's still very embryonic, right? I
Yep.
mean, you were talking about the origin of AI and all that. I was doing a little bit of research on that a while ago, and from what I've seen, it started in if this is the right date, it started in 1951, where the first program was
Really?
and it was to emulate a chess player, right? So it was the
Oh,
first.
yeah, I think I read about that. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was like the first machine learning where something
exactly.
would take it and then it would learn and predict the next step.
It
And
would learn the moves from other,
yeah,
chess masters and start to apply it, not to the level that IBM was successfully doing a
right.
decade back or something like this, but
Yeah,
it was the beginning of it. So
yeah,
that was interesting. A
yeah,
combination of human behavior and machine, and have the second one try to emulate the first one. So
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
interesting. So
And
that's
when
pretty much it. But yes, channels, partnerships, alliances. That's my thing.
yeah, it's
And
so
the thing,
important.
yeah.
Yeah,
And go ahead.
no, 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 please go ahead. Finish,
No, what I
please.
was going to say is with Carlo, that's so with TBI, the Tortora Brayda Institute and everything, that's really the cornerstone of everything we're doing, right? And that's what
Yeah.
started it, in the sense that when you look at all the analysis that you can find about business to business to consumer flow of transaction, it's way past 70% that everything is indirect today.
Yeah.
So, and what we realize is over the past 23 years, there's been a strong evolution of everything partnerships, right? So channel,
Hmm.
I'm not talking about mergers and acquisition. I'm talking about transactional partnerships and those type of things. And there's a reason for that. Is that, when you think about when was the last time you bought your shirt directly from the vendor, or your car directly, unless you have a Tesla, but your car directly from the vendor and so on. You don't do that. You
Right.
always go through somebody that is between the manufacturer and yourself.
Hmm.
And this is growing, and now that technology is going faster, and that the need of customers is higher, and their demands, their requirements are more stringent, and all those kind of things. You can't do it alone. You can't. Nobody can do it alone.
Absolutely.
That's why you see
Absolutely.
the Microsoft, the Amazon, the Googles of the world. They have gigantic partnership ecosystems, yet they have gigantic deep pockets that they could do everything by themselves if they wanted to. Well, no, they can't. So, and
No,
realizing this,
that's
we're like,
exactly
well,
right. Yeah.
yeah, those things should have improved, but the rate of failure in partnerships is still the same. That
Hmm.
hasn't changed, right? It's still
Yep.
super high, and so we're trying to help with that. That's
That's excellent. Well, and that's a great insight too, because when I think about good strategic channel partnerships, right? And when we're talking about the channel, we're talking about the channel applies to the distribution channel, right? It's like where they get all of the pieces to make their ultimate offering, right? It's from a whole myriad of partners, right? Every organization has channel partners, whether they formally call it that or not. But
absolutely.
and to me, when a good partnership makes it, and I'm interested in hearing what you guys think, but to me it's always winds up, when it's successful, it winds up being better than the sum of the parts, right?
Absolutely.
Because you've got one partner that's really good at XYZ, you've got another partner that's really good at ABC, but together it's not just those six elements. They create something like completely new because of the strengths. They can like lean on each other and really go to market with some outstanding results.
Hmm.
So, real briefly, let's talk about the think tank for a while. Carlo, what caused you to create it, and can you explain to the listeners what it is and what it's accomplished, what's coming up in the future?
Yeah, yeah. So, as you mentioned earlier, one of the big chapters of my life was being a special constituent at the World Economic Forum, working on a number of initiatives to do with technology, innovations, cybersecurity, impact of risk assessment, global risk assessment for the G20, and
That is
so
pretty cool, by the way. I just
it,
want to like let everybody know, like that's a big deal. So
it
anyway,
it
go ahead.
for me it was for me because I found myself doing these things kind of it was not planned. It was it just a sequence of events that took me from A to B, and then there I was involved in some really interesting activities with very, very, very interesting people. And one of the things that I thought was remarkable within the context of the World Economic Forum is how, first of all, I have nothing but respect for it. It's a fantastic organization. And I know that some people criticize it, but it's a fantastic organization. Like I will also say, in my opinion, the United Nations is a fantastic organization.
Yeah,
The,
exactly. I mean,
yeah,
politics aside, the things that it can accomplish through partnership are amazing.
exactly. And it does accomplish things through partnerships, and they both do. The UN sometimes has its failings, but generally it's a phenomenal organization, and it's set for the right reasons. That's I think when an organization sets forth with very noble reasons, noble objectives, that's really worth following. It's worth paying attention. Now, the World Economic Forum is a place for dialogue. It's a place for private and public sector to come together and forge a better vision and a better path for the future. And I thought this was just such a fantastic experience, such a fantastic organization, that I thought, let's see. When I came over to live in the United States about 12 years ago, coming into the world of cybersecurity and all that, I felt that there was a little bit of a disconnect, in the sense that the private and public sector were not really driving that well, right? The public sector has its mission, its strategy, and it follows it. Private sector is blissfully unaware frequently of what the public sector, of what government wants to do. Take the U.S. cybersecurity strategy. I haven't seen the latest one, but just a few iterations ago, it was there was a disjoint there when it comes to, for example, wanting to support the U.S. Cybersecurity industry in its export potential, not only for the economic advantage that it brings back to U.S. companies, but also for the security advantage that it provides to our NATO ally countries and companies therein.
Yeah,
Right?
what wasn't the first national security cybersecurity strategy wasn't it published like in 2003, one of the last iterations, and it's coming up, or it just passed, I believe, its 20-year mark. We kind of thought we were going to see it formalized on that date, but I think that date is either imminent or past slightly. So
Well,
it should be coming out any day. They say that there is a 13-page document or something that's been circulated that
There
some
was
people have
one
seen.
last year. They released quite a bit of material about that, so it's the U.S. government is taking it very seriously now,
exactly.
Mhm.
and they're taking into account the concept of partnering with private companies and all that also extremely seriously. Right, there's
Yeah.
a number of initiatives right now that are taking place by which the U.S. government is inviting a lot of people around the table, right? So it's good.
Yeah.
It's that disconnect that Carlo was mentioning is narrowing. Let's put
It's
it this way.
narrowing.
Yeah.
Not fully fixed, I'm sure, but completely narrowing. Yeah, for sure.
It is, and we're seeing the current administration really, making some great advances, and it's necessary. This is the organization, our think tank, our institute is, it's a non-profit, it's non-partisan, and so we're really stay very objective about things. Um, but we like the way things are going right now, and of course we work. Let's say somehow in lockstep, we try to evolve and to create a roundtable for these discussions. And so many of our events that we hold within the Institute bring together stakeholders, decision makers, thought leaders from different avenues to talk about issues that are of great importance, such as, for example, how to mitigate the risk that comes from the talent gap that we have in cybersecurity, right?
Mhm.
That's for example, a big issue.
Yeah, you recently held an event with leaders from like every type of organization, and it was absolutely fascinating to see so many great minds and people in positions or with authority to actually make a difference, really address the that talent gap or that it's really not a skills gap, but it's just finding the right people and the right sources, creating that right curriculum to get people trained to really fill the needs in cybersecurity. It was
Yeah,
really a remarkable thing that the think tank did.
and there's a fact that we are roughly 3 million jobs out, right? We really need a lot more people in order to provide the type of cybersecurity strength that our nation needs. So
Absolutely.
that's really, it's key. It's really brutally important. And AI will help, but it doesn't help to fill the gap in that way, right?
Right.
People always say, well, AI will fill in the jobs. Well, no, AI supports and it creates a new kind of industry, new kind of service jobs, but it doesn't really take away jobs at the end of the day. It never has done, really. It just creates new opportunities. Maybe
Well,
different.
yeah, and what are your thoughts? I mean, to me, it's not really eliminating a drastic amount of jobs. To me, it's almost enhancing people in those roles. Like they're able to accomplish a lot more faster and speed things up and have more precision.
Exactly. And we are living in a world which is becoming ever more, let's say, volatile, right? From a conflict perspective, international relations are taut, right? Russia is as it is. The relationship with China is as it is. Uh,
Mhm.
Other countries are pumping a ton of money into research, into AI, into training people, training in cybersecurity, and all that. And we in the United States need to do better than that. We need to stay in our position of dominance for our safety overall, really, and also for the values that the United States has. It's the value system in the world. The United States plays a very important role, in my opinion, and so I'm very keen to see that stay as it is. And so our think tank works to try to keep things that way and to improve things. For instance, when it comes to public-private partnerships, that's a very important part of what we want to accomplish in our organization. And for instance, right now we're working on a bid to support CISA together with the Department of Foreign Affairs in Spain and the Department of the U.S. Department of let me just refer to that actually because I was working on it earlier. Department of State, the U.S. Department of State. How could I miss it? So, and we're looking to provide a program to evaluate how to better the best practices for private-public partnerships from a cybersecurity standpoint. Right? You can imagine how hard it is already to secure a corporation. You guys know it's all covered. You have your clients, and creating a cybersecurity posture that is really tight is very hard, very hard on just one company. We know how hard it is when there's even a supply chain around that, right? A third
Right.
party management is really it gets complex. It's never easy to really say I got 100% security. You can't really. Imagine when you're actually having a multi-stakeholder partnership where some elements are government organizations, maybe some of them are a little bit archaic, right? Because not all of them are really up to date and modern. Not in all countries. Maybe in Spain they're not quite as advanced. Maybe they're more advanced, but it's all different. So when things come together like that, how do you go about making sure that these partnerships are really secure? Right.
Is there a framework? Is there a codified series of best practices for public-private partnerships? I know that's what you're kind of looking to create with the U.S. government and with CISA. But have there been attempts at that in the past?
So
So
go ahead, Jill.
no, there's a number of framework out there that exist. Through our organization like NIST and
Of
others, and
course.
of
Yeah.
course,
Yeah.
but
We're familiar with like the NIST standards and things like that.
okay,
I just didn't know if they and we're familiar with CMMC and
yeah. So
all of those
CMMC,
elements.
all those kind
Yeah,
of things
I,
exist,
I
right?
I was just curious about like the element of public private partnering. Like, is there anything that's specific? Are there anything that specifically addresses that, or
So
is this something you guys are creating?
not to the level of granularity we're talking about when you talk about NIST or a TMMC or those type of things, right? I mean, there's no clear dissociation to say that if you're a private entity versus if you're a public entity, you need to go through those hoops or these hoops, right? Not that I'm aware of. So in all disclosure, there might be something, but I'm not aware of such a thing at this point through all the bids and all the thing I've gone through in the past. Requirements are always the same. But the good thing is about NIST and about CMMC, for example, and others, is that they do evolve, right? Over even within the healthcare industry, right? HIPAA is evolving towards those things and all that, and they have like new regulations coming out regularly for what does security on a piece of software should look like if it is to serve within the healthcare and life sciences industry, right? And so on and so forth. So there are things in the making, right? Is there like the mother of all framework that says you up? No, absolutely. And as I just mentioned with healthcare, for example, if you go to the financial services world, it's going to be different and this and that. So there's some of them good because they're required to be differences between one vertical versus another. Some of them maybe not so good because it's just noise in the middle of things, right? And then you have private organization that for security purposes and all that, for partnerships and have dedicated specific teams to work on specific requirements. And this, for example, if you want to partner with AWS, there are some specific, hoops and filters and things that you need to check, and you need to do well before. First of all, you can put your software on their platform, on their marketplace, or partner with them. But also, if you aim at targeting the federal government, there's a different sets of things that you're going to have to abide by and or to abide with. Sorry. And so on and so forth. So this is building, right? Those frameworks are building, and there is evolution coming every year or every 2 years or that kind of thing. But just like Jen Esterly is doing at CISA and all that, she really injected. She's the director. She really injected like a bunch of new things with her team that makes it more open and to this collaboration between private and public sector.
And, she's really come out pretty strong. Like I really am always pleasantly surprised whenever I hear her speak about, the need to drive more engagement and more leadership buy-in in the private sector and the public sector for cybersecurity, frameworks and not just in mind of compliance, right? I mean, there's compliance where they kind of just go through the motions, spend the minimal amount of time, energy, and resources just to check the box. And then there's security where they're really going to do sometimes just, compliance almost is like just the evidence that you're taking the right steps. But sometimes you have to take more, right? You have to go farther to actually, secure your brand. And not that anything can actually secure it, but to me it's almost like dials on a board that it's just levels of risk, right? There's different elements. You want to just raise the dial a little bit, depending on what your exposure is, what your vulnerability is for your organization or the sector. From where you guys, I'm curious if it's okay to ask, from your perspective and your experience and the people that you guys are speaking with on a regular basis, what is there a vertical that you're seeing that is taking security steps in the right direction a little better than other verticals? Like, to me, just in the reason, let me give you a little context. To me, the financial sector has been pretty like at the forefront. Healthcare has been at the forefront. I see legal kind of dragging along, education dragging along, like on the scale of maturity, basically. But what is your sense? You guys see a lot more than Mark and I do.
Do you want to start, Carlo, on this one?
Look, I'll tell you, for me, the best and the worst. Best finance, worst water.
Oh, water. Everybody, just wanted to mention Cybercrime Junkies Prime. We now have a subscription available through our podcast, and it offers exclusive content, bonus episodes, and even pre-releases of all of our standard shows.
We keep it simple. It's just the cost of 1 cup of coffee one time a month, and you can cancel anytime.
You can subscribe by scanning the QR code next to me in the video or by clicking the link in the show notes. If you select not to subscribe to our Prime membership, please at least consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. It's at Cybercrime Junkies Podcast on YouTube, and it's absolutely free. It allows us to bring great guests on the show. Thank you for your support, and now let's get back to it. Water. Interesting.
Yeah. Oh, that's really the amount of research around that and statements around water vulnerabilities. I mean, critical infrastructure really needs to be a lot stronger, right? But water really concerns us a lot because, of course, that's what we rely on, and it has it's very sprawling. It's not organized centrally very easily, right? It's organized at the state level,
really at the micro level, right? Like it's like little organizations, little villages have their own water supplies here and there.
And those in charge don't really have a cybersecurity culture, so that worries me a lot. I'm a big I'm very, very worried about critical infrastructure in particular, but of all the segments in critical, water is something that concerns me. Gilles, what are you going to say?
No, I'm with you, David, when you mention financial services. Well, banking and financial services is number one, obviously, still is. What's interesting is to see so out of the 17 now critical infrastructure, because we have added space to the list, I guess. They're really ahead, but everybody's following suit, right? And again, there is a drive from the U.S. government that says, hey, these are the 16, 17 things that are making the nation stick together and everyday life going on as planned if they still are capable of operating as intended, right? So it is important to make sure that all this is working well. And but they cannot force anybody to do anything yet, right? There's incentives that are starting to be put in place, just like insurance incentive, cybersecurity insurance and all this type of thing that can make a difference. But financial industry way ahead. When you look at something we did, when you look at the structure of blue and red teams organization within large corporation, because not everybody is capable of finding the talent, number one, and to financing the talent to build their own red team, right? A vast majority of the red teams are within big banks and financial institutions, period. And then you look at healthcare, for example, and it's about zero there. There's nothing.
Oh, really?
So water, I don't know. Probably Carlo's right. For me, the big culprit of the typical critical infrastructure has always been healthcare. For 5 years, we tried at the company I was working for in the media and entertainment industry in the Netherlands. We tried through a partnership with IBM to get into bettering the cybersecurity of the healthcare industry, right? And mostly by going to manufacturers or device manufacturers, and then pharma, and then hospitals, organization, all that. And what we've seen is absolutely flabbergasting. It's like they every time, or most of the time during that 5-year, 10-year I had there, that they were faced with a investment to make. It always goes to what is going to make us profit. It never goes to what is going to prevent us some losses. Right?
Short-term quarterly returns as opposed to long-term sustainability.
Absolutely, and it's changing, right? It's changing through the efforts of, again, you have organizations that try to regulate this. And their stance on cybersecurity for their constituents, right, the member of that sector, used to be, you should do this and you should do that, right? And we know where should goes. It never goes further than the bottom line
No,
of the
no
company,
one
right?
ever does. Yeah,
Uh,
it's
and
because at the end it's all people, right? Like
yeah,
it's still people, it's still behavioral, right? And not to simplify it, but when somebody says you should do something, it's like parents telling children you should do something. It's
well,
like,
there's that.
okay, but if you're going to take the car away if I don't do it, and you're going to not let me back in the house if I don't come home on time, I'm going to come home on time and not do it because I want the car, right? Like it's if you actually impose shall do it, right, as opposed to should do it, then behaviors start to change.
It starts, and it's said that you have to be punitive, right,
Yeah,
for those kind of things. But it's exactly, you have a good analogy with kids, right? It's the same thing. If it doesn't hurt enough, people are just gonna stick to doing what they were doing.
yeah.
But there's hope, right? Now the
Mhm.
message starts changing, and the
Well,
message that used to be should starts becoming must,
I mean,
right?
cybercrime has grown into that 800-pound
Of
gorilla in
course,
the room. So
of
it's
course.
it's that along with the media bringing it to our attention. When
Oh,
we look, well, yeah, when we look back, 10, 15 years ago, it was, rarely in the media, and now it's every single week,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. And
you know,
it's like, and that helps, right? And that
Hmm.
helps with the frequency of it, helps as well. As you're mentioning, now it's every time. Because before, you could feel this attitude of, I'm not gonna get hit by lightning, right?
Hmm.
It's like, it's us now, we're good. It's gonna hit the guy next to me and the other one here, but it's not gonna hit me ever. And we know, but before that, when a company got hit, or a hospital got hit, or something happened, right? It was like nobody heard about it.
Right.
Now
Well,
it's like all over, and so it doesn't look really good, right?
no.
So,
And that goes back to your point earlier, Joe, when you mentioned the increase in complexity of these cyber criminal organizations and their diversification and
Mhm.
departmentalization. And as that increases, and we sit here and we talk about partnerships, and it makes me wonder, and Carlo, maybe you can touch on this with your international involvement as well. Are we currently, or is there an opportunity for nations across the globe to form partnerships to
yeah,
begin to combat
oh,
this? And what does that
absolutely.
look like?
So that's really exciting for me, and that's really what our think tank is all about. See, when we talk about our think tank being an institute really focusing on partnerships for cybersecurity, it means everything. It means channel partnerships, yes, in terms of go to market, but it also means alliances between vendors, but it also means partnerships amongst different sovereign nations that are allied, right? So one of the things that we do. One of the task forces we had, and I think David, you might have been part of that initial discussion with when we talked about AI in one of the World Cafes. As a result of that, we created a task force to explore the crossover between cybersecurity and AI. As a result of that, a team of very smart members of the institute decided to form together an ISAO. So we now have the United States National Artificial Intelligence and Cybersecurity ISAO, which is an initiative and a program of the institute. And the executive director of the institute, Michael Tismeyer, who I hope you'll be meeting soon, um, is very much into the cyber diplomacy side of things. So ensuring, for example, that there is collaboration and there is sharing of best practices, not only amongst companies, but also amongst companies and organizations like ours and similar amongst different NATO nations. So not many months ago, about I don't know, 5, 6 months ago, I was at a conference, a NATO conference in Riga, in Latvia, together with Michael Tismeyer. And over there, we found that there were some NATO member nations and like defense research institutes and organizations that have the same concerns that we have around safeguarding critical infrastructure. And they have their experiences, and we have our experiences. But we haven't been talking. There hasn't been
Right.
really kind of dialogue, right? But now that's what we're trying to do. That's what our institute is very largely about, and particularly the ISAO. It's about promoting these kind of conversations. And so right now, Michael, in fact, spending an enormous amount of time with NATO in Riga and in Estonia to have these conversations. One of the things that we're actually going to be putting in place as a membership benefit to the members of the ISAO right now is also some really interesting technology that I think you'll find absolutely fascinating. But essentially, it's a dark web monitoring of cyber criminal activities.
Oh
And
yeah, that we absolutely love to see that because, I mean, if you can shine a light on anything that is happening in the dark, right? Philosophically, it helps us.
well, it's amazing.
It just helps us understand. I mean, we have to understand the mind of the threat actor, right, and the motivation of it, and their behavior and their behavioral patterns, because that allows us to defend ourselves better.
Exactly, exactly. You have to know, right?
Right.
And so what I've done, so we'll be offering that as a service to the members of the ISAO, right, on a bureau basis. And that's all been agreed now. I'm really excited about that. But I've
Now, when
actually,
you say ISAO, can you, for somebody that doesn't know what that is, could you explain that?
So the we talk about the critical infrastructure,
yeah,
Mhm.
and there are organizations that federate what they're doing and all that from an IT perspective and know more cyber, which we call ISACS,
Right.
right?
they're
So
gonna,
those are structured by vertical. So you have 17 of them, right? As simple as that. The ISAO is exactly the same thing. So information sharing
ethics organization.
and ISAO, information sharing and analysis organization, right? So we federate people and all that to come to talk, but this time it's not specific to a vertical; it's specific to a horizontal. That's the difference between an ISAC and an ISAO.
Yep.
And so the vertical that we have is AI and cybersecurity, in the sense of AI reinforcing cybersecurity or helping reinforce cybersecurity, but also the other way around. Cybersecurity to protect AI, because one of the things you'll notice when you look at algorithm and all that is that they're great at doing things except protecting themselves. That
Right.
they don't do. So if you don't inject cybersecurity into AI, people are going to start messing up with your algorithm, and your AI is going to fail or
Yep.
do things that they were not intended to do. So that's what an ISAO is. It's you take a theme or something, and then it's across all verticals, everything, right? It's completely horizontal. Where an ISAC is going to be very vertical, like healthcare ISAC, space ISAC, IT ISAC, blah blah blah. Those type of things.
Yeah. Okay, good. I just wanted, because whenever we talk cybersecurity, we throw around a lot of acronyms. I just want anybody that's listening to this while they're driving or working out or have it on at work that
Sure.
that they understand the context of what we're talking about.
And
So,
just going back on that on the idea of dark web monitoring. For me, it's
mhm.
something that should be part of every cybersecurity assessment. Because
Oh yeah,
too often assessments will really look at your surface attack area. They'll look at the what your perimeter looks like, but they're not monitoring. They're not seeing the dark web chatter around your domain. And as I was saying earlier, I decided to take a look at the sectors that are of concern to me, like the critical infrastructure sectors, including healthcare. And it's terrifying to see how vulnerable they are and how much uh, criminal activity there is in the underworld there, talking about attacking and trying to figure out ways to penetrate defenses of necessary organization.
yeah. I mean, I've heard directors of security, CISOs, say it's kind of like whack-a-mole. Like you're literally trying to figure out where they're going to hit next, and having intel on things like that really lets you know where you're able to anticipate where the next hit is going to come from.
That's
One of the
exactly what that tool is for. Yep,
Yeah,
it's great.
exactly.
Yep.
Well, one of the more fascinating people that we've met with has been John DiMaggio with Analyst One, and he actually he's going to be on Trafficked on National Geographic coming up the first week in March. We're actually having him on our show a couple days after that comes up, and we he actually spent a year undercover talking with the heads of Lockbit 3.0. So pretty great stuff. So as we wrap up, what is next on the agenda for you, Gilles and Carlo? Like what's coming up? What's on the horizon? Just share with the ladies and gentlemen of the audience kind of what's on the horizon for you guys.
Carlo?
Well, let me kick it off. I mean, from my standpoint, we're all very excited about the launch of the National AI and Cybersecurity ISAO. We're putting a lot of effort behind it. We're putting to some phenomenal offers to future members. So including cyber monitoring of dark web and so on and so forth. We're very excited about that. We're, of course, always trying to bring forward the discussion of how do we reduce this cybersecurity talent gap. That's an ongoing thing. We are very excited about this year's focus of sustainability and AI. So for the third year running, supporting a United Nations program called AI for Good in the United States. And we're putting together a contest to scout for talent in the United States, companies that produce AI that actually aligns with any one of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals from the UN. And the ones that companies that win this get monetary prizes as well as endorsement from the United Nations system and ability to sell it to the United Nations system. So that's absolutely huge. Really exciting.
Phenomenal. That's phenomenal.
Yeah. And then, of course, we're always looking for the next big issue, the next, the next big problem. One of the problems that is still unsolved that we're really putting a lot of effort on this year is critical infrastructure. How do we go about securing that in the U.S.? There are about 300,000 companies in critical infrastructure that are exposed and that need to be secured better. How do we go about creating a program, public-private partnership in lockstep with the government to make sure that critical infrastructure is being looked after? Because critical infrastructure is not just the big companies. It's not just PG&E, right? There's a whole pyramid of small players there, and they all need to be secured. And so we'll be sleeping a lot better in a few years' time when we see that as an accomplished task, right? So
Absolutely.
we're looking forward to new ideas coming forward from members of the Institute. I would, by the way, welcome all the listeners to join the Institute. We should make the...
absolutely. We will have links in the show notes and the description for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you both, gentlemen. Thank you for all the work that you do, and thank you for your time today. Absolutely
we'll have
fascinating.
to have them back because I found myself sitting here taking mental notes of all the things that I was learning. It's new information that you were sharing, and I know the listeners will find this very valuable as well. So, we may have to talk about a part 2 because there's a whole lot more that I really want to unpack with you guys.
Absolutely love to.
Absolutely
love to, Mark and David. This is always good to be able to share with everybody who wants to listen, and generates even more ID usually when we get out of the things, Carlo and I. So it's always very profitable. So
absolutely,
so
absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We will talk soon, everybody. Thanks for listening and watching.
Bye, everyone.
Hey, well, that's a wrap. Thank you for listening. Our next episode starts right now.
Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's free, and download the podcast episodes available everywhere you get podcasts.
To support our show and get exclusive pre-release episodes and bonus content, please subscribe to Cybercrime Junkies Prime.
Link in the description and show notes. And thanks for being a Cybercrime Junkie.